Sometimes a person wakes up in the morning and feels like their life is quietly slipping through their fingers. They are not poor, not unhappy, not abandoned, but inside there is a strange emptiness, as if they are constantly missing something. Not because fate was cruel to them, but because day after day they allowed themselves a little less than they could. A little later to make a decision, a little later to start, a little later to change. This is how the first of the habits that slowly destroy life appears, the habit of delaying decisions. It sounds harmless. We call it thinking it over, weighing options, not rushing. But most often it is not caution, it is fear.
Fear of taking a step after which one would have to answer for oneself. And so a person stands before a choice, to change jobs or stay, to leave or stay, to confess or remain silent. And every time they say to themselves, "A little later, I will wait." But time does not wait. It simply goes. And with each passing day, decisiveness weakens, and doubt becomes a way of life.
Delaying is an invisible tax on all opportunities. It is not visible on a calendar. It does not appear in a bank account, but it is what makes a person poor. Not in money, in potential, because rich is the one who acts, and poor is the one who waits for the perfect moment. Anyone who has ever postponed an important decision knows this feeling, as if you are standing on the edge of something big and the wind pushes you forward, but inside a voice whispers, "Later." This voice sounds soft, even caring. It promises safety, calm, certainty. But in reality, it deprives you of a chance to grow. This is exactly how a person becomes an observer of their own life. They wait for everything to fall into place, for inspiration to come, for clarity. But life does not like to wait. It moves like a river, and those who are afraid to enter the water remain on the shore with the illusion that they still have time. The second habit flows from the first. It is called making excuses. This is the art of explaining to yourself why nothing works out, why now is not the time, why circumstances are to blame, why others are just luckier. Making excuses is not lying. It is a form of protection. A person does not want to see themselves as weak, so they invent reasonable reasons not to act. They say, "I am not procrastinating, I am just preparing," or "I need a little more information," or "Now is a difficult time, but later." Each such later turns into a loop that makes inaction comfortable. The problem with excuses is that they sound plausible, they console, they give the illusion of control. But the truth is that behind every excuse hides fear. Fear of imperfection, fear of making a mistake, fear of hearing no. Therefore, a person chooses to speak beautifully instead of acting imperfectly. The world is full of those who know why they failed, full of those who could have, if only. But reality belongs to those who act, even when afraid. Because behind fear there is always a step. And this step is the only thing that separates a dream from reality. Excuses steal the energy that could have become action. It is like fuel burned in vain, loud, bright, but without movement. And the most dangerous thing is that the longer a person lives with this habit, the harder it is to see that they are simply standing still. They no longer feel guilt because they have an explanation. They can even be proud of how beautifully they reason. But reasoning does not feed, build, or save. It only creates the illusion of life. And one day comes a moment when a person realizes their life is full of excuses, but empty of results. Everything they considered objective reasons turned out to be fear. Fear of a decision that should have long been made. Fear of responsibility, which makes us groan. And at that moment, they can either say to themselves again, "A little more," or for the first time in a long time, say, "Enough." But few dare, because the habit of delaying and making excuses gives a strange sense of calm, as if you live safely, without pain, without mistakes, but along with it, without growth, without risk, without victories. And the older a person gets, the stronger it seems that opportunities have already passed, although in fact, they have just been standing in front of them all this time. They simply did not dare to step forward. This is why these two habits are the most dangerous. They do not look destructive. They do not shout, do not break, do not make you suffer. They quietly take away years from you, softly, gently, almost imperceptibly. And one day, waking up in the morning, a person will again feel that same emptiness. And they will realize it was not fate, not circumstances, not other people. It was because they waited too long for life to change on its own. Living by others' standards seems safe. It seems that if you follow rules, expectations, and other people's ideas, life will be easier and your decisions will be correct. But in reality, it is a trap. Every time you make a choice based on what others do, you lose a part of yourself. At first, it goes unnoticed. You choose a job because it's prestigious, marry someone approved by friends, buy things that fit the overall style. Over time, it becomes law, your own desires dull, and decisions stop being yours. Have you noticed how people living by others' standards often seem happy at first glance, but inside, emptiness? This is the result of constant comparison. Every step is under the scrutiny of others. Every success is filtered through someone else's judgment. In your head, there are constant questions. What will they say? What if they don't like it? Is this right? All energy goes into pleasing others, while true desires fade into the shadows. This habit is closely tied to spending more than you earn. When you live by others' standards, you try to match the image. A new car, expensive phone, branded clothes. All of this masks an inner sense of inadequacy and fear of being less than others. At first, it seems like an investment in status, but in reality, it becomes a debt pit and constant stress. People who spend more than they earn live in constant tension. Every month, a struggle with bank accounts, loans, debts, postponing real plans. Money goes where it isn't, and happiness drifts further away. Even if everything looks fine externally, internally a person feels anxiety, fatigue, and helplessness. It's interesting to observe how these habits reinforce each other. A person who lives by others' standards inevitably spends more to maintain the image. A person who spends more than they earn feels compelled to imitate others. Otherwise, they don't measure up. It's an endless circle that destroys inner freedom and confidence. Life stories confirm this at every turn. For example, a young man who always wanted to work in a creative field chooses a legal career because parents and friends consider it prestigious. He buys expensive suits and drives a status car to fit in. He earns money at work, but does not enjoy it because every action is not his own, but under external pressure. Inside, there remains a sense of emptiness and loss of self, or a woman striving to be the perfect wife, perfect mother, and perfect employee. She buys expensive items for her family, attends trendy courses to stay at the level, lives by a schedule not made for her, but to meet others' expectations. At night, she lies down exhausted, realizing the day passed and she never did what she truly wanted. Psychologists note that these habits form from childhood. A person learns that others' opinions are more important than their own. They see that obedience is praised and independence punished. In adulthood, this mechanism turns on automatically, the habit of following others. Standards grows into living through others. Dreams, expectations, and rules. Financial habits also often root in childhood. If there was fear of money in the family, or a spend to appear better model, a person unconsciously adopts it. They consider living beyond their means normal to maintain the image of success. Gradually, this becomes a lifestyle. Salary goes to loan payments. Loans support the image that no one really demands except the person's own mind. The dangerous thing is that these destructive habits are not immediately visible. Externally, a person seems successful, confident, and well off. Many friends envy them. But inside, constant tension, fear of not measuring up, anxiety, and a sense of lack. Each day passes trying to satisfy others' expectations instead of fulfilling true desires. This internal struggle manifests in many areas. At work, achievements feel meaningless because they are not yours but others. In relationships, there is emptiness because self-love and respect for personal desires are absent. In personal life, you never really know what you need because your life is subordinated to external demands. This is the danger of living by others' standards and spending more than you earn. They are quiet, subtle, like a fog gradually enveloping a person. The longer you live with these habits, the harder it is to notice them. They become part of your personality, your decisions, your inner speech. Even if you now think, "But I'm successful, I have everything I need," it is important to understand that true success is measured not by external indicators, but by inner freedom. The ability to choose for yourself, without fear, excuses, or debts, created to appear like someone else. Right now, while listening to this, it's the perfect time to realize these habits quietly destroy you. If you continue following others' standards and spending more than you earn, tomorrow you will wake up feeling life is passing by. And that day will be the first of many when you realize your decisions aren't really yours. Habit 5. Refusing to learn and develop. Many think that education ends with a diploma and skills are acquired only as needed. But life moves too fast. The world changes, technologies evolve, psychology, economy, communication. Everything changes at a tremendous speed. A person who stops developing inevitably falls behind. At first, it is not noticeable. You continue to work, live a habitual life, make the same mistakes. But every missed opportunity is a tiny step backward. You do not learn new ways to solve problems, do not discover new horizons, do not understand how society is changing. With each year, the gap between you and people who are developing grows. For example, a young marketing specialist stops studying new tools and promotion methods, relying only on what they knew 5 years ago. Colleagues master new platforms, use data analytics, create creative campaigns. Outwardly, everything seems fine. Work is done, reports submitted. But competitiveness drops, opportunities for growth disappear, and the person does not realize that the cause is the habit of refusing constant development. The second aspect of this habit manifests in personal life. Those who do not strive for personal growth are limited in communication, emotions, understanding themselves and others. They repeat the same mistakes, experience failures again and again, and do not find effective strategies to solve problems. Their world narrows, and opportunities diminish. Habit 6. Surrounding yourself with empty, negative, or unmotivated people. A person essentially becomes the average of their closest circle. If you constantly interact with people who complain, envy, criticize, and do not develop, sooner or later these qualities begin to manifest in you. For example, if your friends spend all their time on gossip, complaining about life, and inactivity, you unconsciously adapt to their rhythm. Time that could be spent on development, books, work, hobbies, is wasted maintaining a negative emotional field. Gradually, the habit of spending time on others' problems and negativity becomes the norm. Even financial habits are transmitted through the environment. If friends constantly borrow money, buy unnecessary items, live on credit, there is a high probability that you will fall into the same trap. Subconsciously, you perceive this as normal, gradually destroying your own financial strategies. The combination of habits 5 and 6 is a formula for degradation. A person who does not develop, surrounded by negativity and empty people, loses understanding of their goals and opportunities. They stop seeing perspectives, lose motivation, inner freedom, and confidence. Psychologists emphasize that the habit of surrounding yourself with the right people is one of the strongest. It shapes thinking, habits, goals, and values. People who consciously choose an environment that develops, supports, and motivates demonstrate significantly higher levels of success, life satisfaction, and inner harmony. Life stories show that even talented, smart, and ambitious people can slide into mediocrity if the environment pulls them down. For example, a programmer with high potential chooses a company where managers demotivate employees, colleagues complain about life, and create nothing. After a couple of years, they feel their skills are outdated, motivation has disappeared, and professional growth has stopped. All this is the result of the habit of allowing the environment to influence oneself. It is important to realize habits 5 and 6 manifest simultaneously. If you stop learning and developing, you become vulnerable to the influence of your environment. If the environment is negative, you stop growing, lose your unique abilities, and life begins to pass by. The internal mechanisms of these habits manifest through psychological reactions: apathy, anxiety, a sense of helplessness, the feeling that nothing can be changed. Each missed opportunity worsens the sense of disappointment, and the person again plunges into a habitual, safe, yet destructive state. The secret of conscious change is to combine development with the right environment. Constant learning, reading, practicing skills, and choosing an environment that stimulates, supports, and motivates creates protection from destructive habits. This is not a one-time process, but a daily strategy that shapes personality, habits, and inner strength. Habit 7. Living without goals. Many believe that planning and goal setting are unnecessary, thinking life will show itself. But the absence of a clear goal turns each day into a chaotic repetition of the previous one, where actions lack meaning. A person without goals wastes energy, and the brain begins to perceive even minor stimuli as important, distracting from what truly matters. Without goals, it is difficult to determine priorities. Simple decisions become complicated, and important steps are postponed. Outwardly, it may seem that life is moving on, but in reality, the person is merely reacting to circumstances instead of managing their own destiny. Over time, this leads to disappointment, a feeling that all efforts are in vain, and a loss of motivation. Habit 8. Comparing yourself to others. This phenomenon is ubiquitous in social media and real life. By comparing your achievements to others, a person unconsciously undervalues their own worth and ignores unique strengths. For example, a colleague gets a promotion or a new car, and you start feeling envy or a sense of inadequacy. Meanwhile, it is forgotten that everyone has their own path, circumstances, and goals. Comparison devalues personal achievements, making a person dependent on external approval and others' recognition. These habits are closely connected. A person without goals is more vulnerable to environmental influence and constant comparison intensifies the feeling of helplessness and life chaos. They act quietly but destructively, gradually eroding confidence, motivation, and decision-making ability. Psychologists note that the habit of comparing oneself to others creates hidden anxiety and stress. Even if a person appears successful externally, internally, a sense of dissatisfaction and inadequacy accumulates. This affects health, interpersonal relationships, and productivity. Life stories show that consciously managing these habits transforms lives. Those who set goals, even small ones, and focus on their own progress without comparing themselves to others, demonstrate higher satisfaction, inner harmony, and the ability to achieve what they want. For instance, a young entrepreneur who previously constantly worried about colleagues' successes decided to record his achievements daily and set small weekly goals. After a month, he noticed that internal tension disappeared, work efficiency increased, and motivation became stable. He stopped wasting energy on others' successes and directed it to developing his own projects. Habits 7 and 8 are like two sides of the same coin: lack of goals and constant comparison with others. Without managing these aspects, a person begins to live in constant stress, a sense of time scarcity, and inability to move forward. The key to change lies in consciously setting goals and focusing on your own path. Even minimal daily steps toward achieving personal goals build a sense of control and confidence. At the same time, it is important to reduce the impact of social comparisons, appreciate your own achievements, and remember, Someone else's success does not diminish your value. These habits affect not only career, but also personal life. Lack of goals makes relationships superficial, and constant comparison undermines trust and harmony. People who have learned to manage these aspects demonstrate more stable relationships, inner stability, and the ability to enjoy their own accomplishments. Habit 9. Fear of change. Changes in life are inevitable. Work, relationships, technology, societal norms. Everything is constantly evolving. Fear of change manifests as resistance, postponing important decisions, and seeking a comfort zone. A person who fears change lives in the illusion of stability, but in reality gradually loses opportunities, experiences, and personal growth. Fear of the new is often linked to internal limitations, doubts about one's abilities, fear of failure, and the habit of seeking approval from others. This fear blocks initiative and forces decisions based on minimizing risks rather than striving for growth. Outwardly, a person may seem calm and cautious, but internally, there is constant tension, suppression of ambitions, and personal desires. For example, a professional who receives an offer for a new project declines it, justifying with, "It's better to stay in the familiar place." At that moment, they miss the opportunity to acquire new skills, meet new people, and advance their career. With each such refusal, the habit of fearing change strengthens, and the comfort zone narrows. Habit 10. Not taking responsibility for your life. This is one of the most destructive habits because it deprives a person of control and power. Shifting responsibility to circumstances, people, or fate creates a sense of being a victim, subordination to external forces, and inability to influence outcomes. A person who does not take responsibility looks for excuses for failures. "It didn't work because the boss is bad. I can't because circumstances are difficult. It's not my fault." Gradually, this becomes an internal program dictating behavior, inaction, procrastination, avoidance of decisions. The psychological consequences of these two habits are interconnected. Fear of change amplifies the sense of lack of control, and avoiding responsibility reinforces the victim mindset. As a result, a person loses inner strength, motivation, and confidence in their actions. Stories of successful people show the opposite. Those who learn to embrace change and take responsibility achieve stable growth and inner harmony. For example, an entrepreneur facing a business crisis decides to change strategy, restructure the team, and take responsibility for the outcome. The risky decision requires courage, but it opens new opportunities, broadens horizons, and builds confidence. Systematic work on overcoming fear of change and cultivating responsibility develops flexibility, confidence, and adaptability. A person begins to see new opportunities, use them, and benefit from challenging situations. These habits directly affect life quality, career success, interpersonal relationships, and inner state. They form a habit of acting consciously, accepting challenges, and managing one's destiny. The combination of the 9th and 10th habits forms the foundation of personal power. Without them, any achievements lose value because the person lives in fear and dependence on external circumstances. With them, the path to freedom, inner harmony, and sustainable growth opens. Fear of change is one of the most destructive habits. Life is constantly evolving. Work, relationships, technology, social norms, everything is in motion. Fear of the new manifests as resistance, postponing important decisions, and a desire to stay in the comfort zone. A person afraid of change lives in an illusion of stability, but in reality gradually loses opportunities, experience, and personal growth. This fear is often linked to internal limitations, self-doubt, fear of failure, and the habit of seeking approval from others. It blocks initiative and forces decisions based on minimizing risks rather than pursuing development. Outwardly, such a person may appear calm and cautious, but internally there is constant tension, suppression of ambitions and desires. For example, a professional receives an offer for a new project but refuses, justifying, "Better to stay in the familiar place." At this moment, They lose the chance to acquire new skills, meet new people, and advance their career. With each refusal, the habit of fearing change strengthens and the comfort zone narrows. Equally destructive is the habit of not taking responsibility for one's life. Shifting blame onto circumstances, other people, or fate creates a sense of victimhood, submission to external forces, and an inability to influence outcomes. A person who avoids responsibility seeks excuses for failures. It didn't work out because the boss is bad. I can't. The circumstances are difficult. It's not my fault. Gradually, this becomes an internal behavior pattern: inaction, procrastination, and avoidance of decisions. These two habits are closely interconnected. Fear of change amplifies the feeling of lack of control, while refusal to take responsibility reinforces victim mentality. As a result, a person loses inner strength, motivation, and confidence in their actions. Stories of successful people show the opposite. Those who have learned to embrace change and take responsibility achieve consistent growth and inner harmony. For example, an entrepreneur facing a business crisis decides to change strategy, restructure the team, and take ownership of results. This bold decision opens new opportunities, broadens horizons, and strengthens confidence. Systematic work on overcoming fear of change and developing responsibility fosters flexibility, confidence, and adaptability. A person begins to see new opportunities, leverage them, and benefit from challenging situations. These habits directly affect life quality, career success, relationships, and inner state. They form a habit of acting consciously, accepting challenges, and managing one's destiny. Every habit discussed is a signal worth paying attention to. Their influence is insidious, but a conscious approach allows them to be turned into a tool for self-discovery and growth. Eliminating destructive behavior patterns makes a person more productive, confident, and resilient to external influences. Applying this knowledge in life yields tangible results. A person working on themselves builds a career, develops relationships, and maintains inner harmony and confidence. They stop reacting automatically to circumstances and begin to live purposefully. The conclusion is simple. Habits can be allies or enemies. Awareness, discipline, and personal responsibility are the keys to creating a life where you are the main character. Every step toward self-control, every action aimed at changing habits, forms a new path, a path of freedom, harmony, and continuous development. Life belongs to those who take it into their own hands. Those who recognize their habits and actively work on them achieve significant heights, unlock personal potential, and create a harmonious and successful life. Every change begins with the realization that responsibility for your fate lies with you, and habits can be used as tools for growth rather than shackles.